We like to build tall and large to impress others, and so did the ancients. Throughout history they have created numerous remarkable structures and works of art. Some were meant as a show of the immense power wielded by great rulers, seeking to immortalize their names. Others took the form of tombs designed to serve as eternal resting places for the elite, while some were constructed as tributes to gods and their divine splendor. Hi, I'm Carl, welcome to Landian TV. This video is the first of a series in which we will take a closer look at the 7 wonders of the ancient world, which are the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Colossus of Rhodes, the Lighthouse of Alexandria, the Mausoleum at Halicarnassus, the Temple of Artemis, the statue of Zeus at Olympia, and the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. This episode will be dedicated to the history of the list itself and the oldest of the wonders, the Great Pyramid of Giza. But before we proceed, please consider subscribing to my channel, and if you will enjoy this video, hit the like button too. This means a lot to me and it is an easy way to show your support for my work. In the 4th century BC, sightseeing became a big thing, as Alexander the Great's conquest of much of Western and Central Asia, parts of South Asia and parts of North Africa gave Hellenistic travelers access to the civilizations of the Egyptians, Persians and Babylonians. Captivated by the marvels of the various lands, these travelers began to list the most impressive landmarks they saw. This ultimately led to the compilation of the renowned list of the 7 wonders of the world. It is worth noting that the entries on the list have varied over the centuries. For example, the epigrammist Antipater of Sidon, who lived around 100 BC, substituted the walls of Babylon for the Lighthouse of Alexandria on his list. Herodotus, known as the father of history, who lived in the 5th century BC, also compiled his list. However, it survived only in references. His list predates the creation of the Colossus of Rhodes by about 200 years, and it does not include the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, so it would also be different from the list that we know today. The first reference to a list that includes all of the 7 most amazing monuments in the world that we recognize as the wonders of the ancient world was given by Diodorus Siculus. He was an ancient Greek historian who lived in the 1st century BC. By that time, the Colossus of Rhodes was already in ruins. In fact, all 7 wonders existed simultaneously for less than 60 years. Initially, they were not even called wonders. The ancient Greeks spoke of theamata instead, which means sights, in other words, things to be seen. It was later that the word for wonders, taumata, was used. Now, with all this out of the way, let's travel to Egypt to witness the oldest and the only wonder that still exists, the Great Pyramid of Giza. The largest among Egyptian pyramids, the Great Pyramid of Giza, functioned as the burial site for Pharaoh Khufu, who reigned during the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom. It was a display of Khufu's power, but also a show of the amazing organization of the ancient Egyptian state, the knowledge of its architects, and the skill of numerous craftsmen involved in the realization of this project. Construction of this colossal structure took place in the early 26th century BC, spanning over 20 years. Originally, towering at nearly 147 meters or 482 feet, it held the title of the world's tallest human-made structure for over 3,800 years, until the completion of the Lincoln Cathedral 160-meter-high central spire in 1311 AD. Over time, much of the pyramid's original smooth white limestone casing has been removed, resulting in a current height of 138.5 meters, about 454 feet. What is seen today is the underlying core structure. The base of each side averages around 230 meters, about 756 feet, contributing to a total volume of approximately 2.6 million cubic meters, or 92 million cubic feet. Notably, an internal hillock is integrated into the design, as the ancient builders chose to construct over an existing hill rather than leveling the ground prior to construction. The creation of the Great Pyramid was a project on an unprecedented scale, and involved quarrying an estimated 2.3 million large blocks with a combined weight totaling 6 million tons. The majority of the stones are not uniform in size or shape and are only roughly dressed. Mortar was utilized to bind together the outer layers, predominantly composed of local limestone sourced from the Giza Plateau. Additionally, certain blocks were transported by boat along the Nile, white limestone from Tura for the casing and granite blocks from Aswan, some weighing up to 80 tons, specifically for the structure of the King's Chamber. Upon completion, the entire Great Pyramid was encased in white limestone. Meticulously crafted blocks were arranged in horizontal layers and carefully fitted together with mortar. The outward faces of these blocks were cut at a slope and polished to a high degree, creating 4 uniform surfaces angled at 51 degrees, 50 minutes and 40 seconds. The apex of the pyramid, once adorned with a capstone known as a pyramidion, has been the subject of much speculation regarding the material from which it was made. While limestone, granite or basalt are commonly suggested, popular culture often imagines it as solid gold, gilded or made of electrum. However, historical evidence indicates that pyramidia from the 4th dynasty, including those of the Red Pyramid, Satellite Pyramid of Khufu and Queen's Pyramid of Menkaure, were crafted from white limestone and were not gilded. It wasn't until the 5th dynasty that gilded capstones became evident. Regrettably, the pyramidion of the Great Pyramid was lost in antiquity, as accounts from Pliny the Elder and subsequent authors describe a platform atop its summit. Presently, the pyramid stands approximately 8 meters or 26 feet shorter than its original height, with around 1,000 tons of material missing from its upper portion. Situated on the north side, the original entrance to the Great Pyramid is positioned 15 royal cubits, approximately 8 meters or 26 feet, east of the pyramid's center line. In antiquity, before the casing was removed during the Middle Ages, access to the pyramid was granted through an aperture in the 19th layer of masonry, approximately 17 meters or 56 feet above the base level. The height of this layer, measuring 96 centimeters over 3 feet, corresponds to the dimensions of the entrance tunnel commonly referred to as the descending passage. According to Strabo, a Greek geographer, philosopher and historian from the transitional period of the Roman Republic into the Roman Empire, a movable stone could be elevated to gain entry to this sloping corridor. However, it remains uncertain whether this feature was a later addition or an original element. Within the Great Pyramid, there exist 3 main known chambers. The lowest chamber was cut into the bedrock upon which the pyramid was constructed, but was left unfinished. Above ground, within the pyramid structure, are the so-called Queen's Chamber and King's Chamber, the latter containing a granite sarcophagus. The Queen's Chamber received its name from Arab explorers, but scholars now agree that it was not intended to be the burial chamber of a queen. Its purpose is unclear. In 2017, researchers employing muon imaging, a technique that uses cosmic ray muons to generate 2- or 3-dimensional images of volumes, detected a large empty space or void above the Grand Gallery. It appeared to be about roughly 30 meters or 98 feet long and was located about 15 to 17 meters, that is 55 feet, above the ground surface. It might be a concealed chamber, but to better understand the nature of this void, further research is required. The interior of the Great Pyramid lacks inscriptions and decorations, which is characteristic of Egyptian tombs of the 4th to late 5th dynasty. Hemunu, the vizier of Khufu, the highest official in ancient Egypt serving the pharaoh, is speculated by some to be the architect of the Great Pyramid. He was buried in a mastaba near the pyramid in the East Field. The funerary complex surrounding the pyramid featured 2 mortuary temples linked by a causeway, one in proximity to the pyramid and the other near the Nile. Additionally, there were tombs designated for Khufu's immediate family and court, including 3 smaller pyramids dedicated to Khufu's wives, a diminutive satellite pyramid, and 5 buried solar barges. These solar barges were symbolic vessels associated with the sun god Ra in ancient Egyptian mythology. Given that the pharaoh represented the earthly embodiment of the sun god, a similar boat was employed upon the pharaoh's death, facilitating his journey through the underworld to the afterlife. The Great Pyramid, with an estimated age of approximately 4,600 years, has traditionally been dated based on its connection to Khufu. This association was primarily derived from the accounts of classical antiquity authors, notably Herodotus and Diodorus Siculus, who attributed the construction of the Great Pyramid to Khufu's reign. Consequently, the dating of the pyramid was contingent on establishing the timeline of Khufu and the 4th dynasty. The connection between the Great Pyramid and Khufu was further confirmed in 1837, when 4 additional relieving chambers were found above King's Chamber. These chambers, previously inaccessible, were covered in hieroglyphs of red paint. The workers who were building the pyramid had marked the blocks with the names of their gangs, which included the pharaoh's name. The names of Khufu were spelled out on the walls over a dozen times. Another of these graffiti was found by Georges Goyon, a French-Egyptian Egyptologist, on an exterior block of the 4th layer of the pyramid. The age of the Great Pyramid has been conclusively established through radiocarbon dating of organic material discovered in the pyramid and integrated into its mortar. Mortar, extensively used in the construction, contained organic components derived from the mixing process, including ashes from fires. This organic material was subject to radiocarbon dating, with a total of 46 mortar samples collected in 1984 and 1995. Rigorous measures were taken to ensure these samples were intrinsic to the original structure and not added later. The results were then calibrated to the time frame of 2871 to 2604 BC. The discrepancy of 100 to 300 years is attributed to the old wood problem, which is a pitfall of the radiocarbon dating. For example, the date being measured may be from hardwood, which is already many centuries old by the time the tree was felled. Another difficulty is that of a possible time lag between felling and final deposition. The timber may have had an extensive history of use and reuse. A re-evaluation of data suggests a completion date for the pyramid falling between 2620 and 2484 BC, based on the younger samples. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus, writing during the 5th century BC, stands among the earliest prominent authors to make mention of the pyramid. In the 2nd book of his extensive work, The Histories, he delves into the history of Egypt, dedicating a section to the Great Pyramid. It's crucial to note that Herodotus composed his report over 2,000 years following the pyramid's construction, relying primarily on indirect sources. These sources encompassed officials and priests of lower rank, local Egyptians, Greek immigrants, and interpreters assisting Herodotus in his research. According to Herodotus, the Great Pyramid was attributed to Cheops, which was the Hellenized name of Khufu. He mistakenly places Khufu's reign after the Ramesside period, the 19th and 20th dynasties. He characterizes Khufu as a tyrannical ruler, a perspective that may underline the Greek belief that structures of such grandeur arise from the cruel exploitation of the population. Herodotus details that a workforce of 100,000 laborers operated in shifts over 20 years to construct the pyramid. The initial decade focused on erecting a substantial causeway described by Herodotus as nearly as remarkable as the pyramids themselves. Stretching almost 1 kilometer or 0.6 miles in length, about 18 meters or 59 feet wide, and rising to a height of 14.6 meters, that is 48 feet, the causeway consisted of intricately carved and polished stone featuring various figures. Herodotus claims that underground chambers were cut into the hill where the pyramids stand, with the purpose of serving as burial sites for Khufu himself. These chambers were surrounded by water, channeled in from the Nile. He later suggests that at the Pyramid of Khafre, adjacent to the Great Pyramid, the Nile courses through a constructed passage, leading to an island where Khufu was interred. Zaya Was, an Egyptian archaeologist and Egyptologist, interprets this as a reference to the Osiris shaft, positioned at the causeway of Khafre to the south of the Great Pyramid. Herodotus goes on to recount an inscription on the pyramid's exterior that, according to his translators, documented the quantity of radishes, garlic, and onions consumed by the workers during the pyramid's construction. This inscription might actually allude to restoration efforts undertaken by Khemweset, the son of Ramses II. Between the years 60 and 56 BC, the ancient Greek historian Diodorus Siculus undertook a visit to Egypt, dedicating the initial book of his Bibliotheca Historica to the country, its historical narrative, and its monuments, including the Great Pyramid. While drawing inspiration from past historians, Diodorus distanced himself from Herodotus, asserting that Herodotus recounted marvelous tales and myths. Diodorus likely derived his insights from the lost work of Hecateusz of Abdera. Similar to Herodotus, he situates the pyramid's builder, referred to as Chemis, which stands for Khufu, after Ramses III. According to Diodorus, both Chemis, Khufu, and Sefren, who we know as Khafre, were not interred within their respective pyramids, but in concealed locations. This precaution, as per his account, stemmed from the apprehension that those compelled to erect the structures might seek out the bodies for retribution. With this assertion, Diodorus reinforces the association between pyramid construction and slavery. According to Diodorus, the casing of the pyramid remained in excellent condition during his visit, while the uppermost segment of the pyramid consisted of a platform standing at 6 cubits, about 3 meters or 10 feet high. Regarding the pyramid's construction, he notes that ramps were employed. These ramps, however, were entirely removed upon the completion of the pyramids. Diodorus estimated that around 360,000 workers were required, and the construction duration spanned 20 years. Similar to Herodotus, Diodorus asserted that inscriptions on the pyramid side detailed the expenditures for vegetables and purgatives, totaling over 1,600 talents for the laborers. As we can see in antiquity, the ancient Greeks held the belief that slave labor contributed to the construction of the Great Pyramid. However, modern discoveries at nearby workers' camps associated with construction at Giza suggest that the pyramid was built by thousands of paid laborers, many of whom were farmers who participated in the construction during the flooding when they could not work their lands. Addressing the query of how over 2 million blocks could have been cut during the Khufu's lifetime, stonemason Frank Burgos undertook an archaeological experiment in 2017 based on a recently uncovered abandoned quarry of Khufu. The site revealed an almost completed block and the tools employed for cutting it, including hardened arsenic copper chisels, wooden mallets, ropes, and stone tools. Using replicas of these tools, the experiment aimed to cut a block weighing approximately 2.5 tons, which is the average block size for the Great Pyramid. 4 workers, each putting in 6 hours a day, took 4 days to excavate it. Progress significantly accelerated when the stone was wetted with water, with Burgos extrapolating that about 3,500 quarrymen could produce the required 250 blocks per day, completing the Great Pyramid in 27 years. A construction management study conducted in 1999 involving Mark Lehner and other Egyptologists estimated that the entire project necessitated an average workforce of around 13,200 individuals, with a peak workforce reaching approximately 40,000. Okay, but were there treasures deposited in the Great Pyramid? The assumption is that there were numerous graves goods stored in the pyramid to accompany Khufu in the afterlife. However, all of it was looted and the pyramid was probably reused over its long history. Arab narratives recount tales of discovering mummies and treasures within the pyramid. One such account comes from al-Makrizi, a medieval Egyptian historian and biographer. He describes finding 3 shrouded bodies, a sarcophagus brimming with gold, a corpse in golden armor with a sword of priceless value, and also a ruby, as large as an egg. Authors Robert Brier, an American Egyptologist, and Hoyt Hobbs, professor of philosophy, claim that all the pyramids were robbed by the time of the New Kingdom, which existed between 16th and 11th century BC, when the construction of royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings began. British archaeologist and Egyptologist Joyce Tildesley states that the Great Pyramid itself is known to have been opened and emptied by the Middle Kingdom that lasted from approximately 2040 to 1782 BC. Jorvet Edwards, who was an English Egyptologist and curator, suggested that the pyramid was entered by robbers after the end of the Old Kingdom and sealed and then reopened more than once. The Great Pyramid is the oldest and sole surviving wonder of the ancient world. Despite all the treasures it once held within were plundered, it serves as evidence of the remarkable ingenuity and craftsmanship of its builders. Its colossal presence on the Giza plateau remains a timeless symbol, echoing the mysteries of ancient civilizations and leaving us with an awe-inspiring legacy of the distant past. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of this series.